Today I'm exploring cravings. Hi, this is Shelley Treacher from the Stress and Anxiety Recovery Podcast. If you're a regular listener, I'm resharing this updated earlier episode on cravings because it connects closely with the addiction and nervous system work that I've been talking about more recently. If you've been exploring stress, anxiety, emotional eating, attachment patterns, or any other kind of compulsion with me, this episode explains what's happening underneath the surface. The science and psychology here still hold up, and it's a helpful foundation for understanding how habit loops form and how they can change. You could also think of today's episode as an introduction to how addiction actually works in the body and the brain. But first, a comment and a question. She says, I am a lifelong comfort eater and I want to stop, but I don't know how. How can I replace food with healthy things? I'm desperate to overcome this problem. This question will be partially answered today in my podcast, as in all of my podcasts, particularly the ones about what it'll take to give up comfort eating. But I also have a couple of specific things to add. Sometimes people suggest replacing a craved substance with another substance that satisfies you. We all hear of alcohol addicts who become sugar addicts after giving up alcohol. But what that does is reinforce a craving. Anything similar to the original cue can trigger a similar craving. This is why recovery isn't about denying pleasure. It's about denying reality. I'm going to be talking today about what a craving actually is, but in general, awareness and intermittent reinforcement are where the stronger learning is. As I talked about in my Habits podcast, one way to change a habit is by giving yourself a reward that's different to the food. So to answer your question, you can only replace the food you crave with healthy food if healthy food feels like a reward that's big enough for you. Personally, I found this to be something that's grown on me. There's absolutely no way I would have imagined replacing chocolate or coffee with fruit or coconut at first. But through mindful attention of what I like, need, and feel, both of these things now feel like a treat to me because they feel so good for my body. So let's start answering some questions about what a craving actually is. The Encyclopedia Titanica tells us that a craving is a passionate, impulsive desire, or desire for something, person, or food. It goes on to say, the craving arises from the formation of mental images of objects, or a person, or food that the human being knew in the past. The craving can come to mind through the association of the senses, such as the smell of an aroma, a sound, among others, that can lead the person to remember, form a visual image, and from that moment on have a craving for something. Raymond F. Anton, MD, in talking of alcohol addiction, says, the neuroadaptive model suggests that the prolonged presence of alcohol induces changes in brain cell function. In the absence of alcohol, those changes cause an imbalance in brain activity that results in craving. Neurobiological and brain imaging studies have identified numerous brain chemicals and brain regions that may be involved in craving. In other words, craving is not a lack of willpower, it's a learned biological response. But how is that process set up? A craving is set up by feeling that you will get a reward. A reward is pleasure of some kind. You get a dopamine hit each time you get a reward from something or someone. So your body remembers that, seeks it out, or sets up a craving when you're reminded of that pleasure. Dopamine is not happiness. It's the anticipation of a reward. This is a normal process that all of us have. We all get cravings. It's part of life. Especially in the world that we live in, where we're reminded of the pleasure that we could buy or have by every single business all the time, all day. The problem comes when the reward is harmful or detrimental in some way. Addiction may be defined as continued use of something despite its adverse effects. The definition of addiction, according to the NHS, is addiction is defined as not having control over doing, taking, or using something to the point where it could be harmful to you. Here we start to see how we can forget ourselves for the sake of that dopamine hit and reward. I can't count the number of times that people have told me that they have to give in to an urge to eat or to drink or to smoke or to check their phone or to text a new love interest, because if they didn't, the craving would just get worse until it was satisfied and they'd end up doing it anyway. This belief is one of the strongest drivers of addiction. The idea that a craving must be obeyed. This is also what can make you irritable when you have a craving. Addictions can be stubbornly held on to, with reasons, excuses, and denial. Like, I've got to finish this, I'll start the diet tomorrow. Or a refusal to see the adverse effects. According to Judson Brewer, the sea slug moves away from toxicity and towards what feels good. And so do we. We move towards and away from what feels good and what feels bad. We love scrolling on Instagram, food, alcohol, and attention from people because they all feel instantly good. We get that dopamine hit every time we get a compliment, that red heart fills out, and that chemical hits our system. The quicker a substance is delivered into your bloodstream, the more of a craving you're likely to get for it. So the addiction builds fast. As normal human beings, we have a lot of knee-jerk responses. These are fast, automatic survival responses, not thoughtful decisions. A knee-jerk response takes only 3 cells to perform. That's exactly what's happening when we respond to a craving. It doesn't take much intelligence, just a quick, unconscious pathway of reward. The trigger reward system means that we're reminded of the substance or person that we got a reward from. We associate feeling good with it, so we want it. Just like all the experiments that have been done with dogs, rats, monkeys, where we observe that the animal goes towards the place of reward habitually and avoids areas of punishment. We are exactly the same. Craving really is that simple. The more we see it, the more we have a bias towards it. And this is how habit develops. For example, if you eat chocolate and it tastes delicious, in the future you're going to choose this against other substances that don't taste as good, given the choice. That's why sometimes if I've got chocolate in the cupboard, my body will want that more than breakfast. We may have a chocolate bias, and we see the world with chocolate glasses, especially if we found that reward when we were feeling upset about something. Just like dieting, this also sets up a dissatisfaction in life, where we constantly wonder what we could be doing to be happier. Craving a dopamine hit is part of this human daily experience. But addiction is when a drug is abused and it hijacks the dopamine reward system in the brain. And this happens far more easily than we think. So what can you do if this has gone too far for you? One thing you can do is check your subjective bias and get to know your habit loops. You've got to work out what reward you're getting to know what it is that you need to give up. So draw this process for yourself. So, for example, it starts pretty soon after I wake up for me. I will start looking for a reward to get me out of bed, as if I need something to look forward to raise me from the pain of having to leave my comfortable, cozy bed. Something to transition comfortably from the soft, perhaps vulnerable, but safe space that I sleep in, to the social, action-oriented world of responsibility. This kind of loop is so useful for me to observe because it gives me back choices, because I'm no longer fighting the craving. I'm understanding it. Really, if I think about it, there's nothing negative about getting up for me. It just might be the way that I do it. When we feed the wound with a substance, we don't allow the wound to heal. But we can if we don't scratch that itch. Succumbing to a craving is so common. It's just like scratching an itch. We all do it. My partner actually had an allergic reaction this weekend, and I kept hearing him scratch his hand. It's impossible not to, isn't it? But as I've been saying, this reward means immediate reinforcement of the craving. It's just going to keep on coming. This is why one drink, one bite of something tasty, or one scratch itch, or even just one cat video leads to just another one. A second thing you can do is to think about times when you were unable to satisfy your craving. I don't know, maybe you were on a journey and you couldn't get hold of the thing that you really wanted. What actually happened? Did it eventually go away? Eventually it does go away. The craving gets triggered, it rides higher, but then it stops and goes away on its own. They feel urgent, but they are temporary. Brewer quotes research into this, where cravings continue for those who continue to feed it, and where it drops after a while for those who don't. Over time, that dopamine hit or the need for it gets less. Each time you eat, drink, scroll, or text that hottie, you reinforce the cravings or addiction. It feels like a relief for a split second, but then you want more. In the case of becoming hooked on a person, your latest crush, it may also be relieving anxiety about being liked, but it does go away if you don't feed it. Especially if you use that feeling of craving. If you join it, if you stay with it and breathe through it. Join it rather than try to get away from it. Be interested in it and use it as a navigation tool. Give up trying to get anywhere other than being present. Learn not to be so caught up in your mind patterns. This is not willpower. This is nervous system learning. What I'm describing here is mindfulness. Brewer shows us that the most effective strategy he used with people when he conducted his research was Tara Brach's RAIN process. This is a process where you recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture whatever comes up for you in the moment. Interesting to me, my most popular podcast was one about breaking habits. That's partly why I'm talking about this again today. But what's even more interesting to me is that one of my least popular podcasts is the one about mindfulness. So I know that you may have a natural resistance to the word even, and the concept of staying present. It sounds like hard work, doesn't it? But it is the number one tool, and it has been for me, in being able to feed myself well and to sustain this habit of not eating sugar. So you may want to be curious about what it is you're seeking when you get interested in a podcast about habit breaking versus one about mindfulness. Is it that quick fix and craving that you're responding to? Are you looking for a quick fix from my podcasts? As you know, I've weaned myself off coffee and sugar by becoming acutely aware of what I was actually getting from it. I remember how it makes me feel. Sugar gives me an uncomfortable rush and sometimes makes me feel sick, and coffee keeps me awake for far too long. Both of them make me feel physically unwell with heart palpitations, dehydration, and tension. But I also stay aware of it being just a craving, which I don't want to be duped by again. I feel more mindful, more often than I did before, about being more present in my life, which has led to a lot of satisfaction for me. So target your craving by turning towards it. I can tell you that one of the most intense times I remember doing this was when I was hooked on an unavailable man many years ago, I'm glad to say. I had both a craving for contact from him, but also to ease my anxiety with junk food. That's cross-addiction. In that instance, I repeated over and over and over again this cycle of noticing my craving, knowing it was just my history and my biology craving a dopamine hit, staying with the sensation of it, and letting it pass, feeling the relief of not having given in to this harmful behavior again. Sometimes it's true that you'll have to run through this cycle many times in succession, but like a wave, it does come and go and fade in its intensity. Your body learns that it's not going to be satisfied in this way, so it stops seeking this reward, which helps you to see more clearly what's good for you and what you really want. Today, I talked about what a craving actually is. I talked about how cravings are linked to the reward system learning and dopamine, just like habits, how habits form through cue, reward, repetition. I also talked about the difference between anticipation and real satisfaction, and why replacing one substance with another can reinforce that loop. I described the definition of addiction and how it develops, why cravings feel urgent but are temporary. I also talked about how every time we give in, we strengthen that pathway. And I talked about how staying with a craving weakens it over time. I mentioned the role of mindfulness and observing sensation, and how cross-addiction can occur. And finally, I talked about how understanding your habit loop gives you back choice. If this episode made sense to you at this time, go back or listen to the episodes on breaking habits, on addiction, or nervous system regulation. These all connect directly with what we've been talking about today. And make sure that you're following the show so that you stay with this series. It's going to deepen in ways that will help you. Thank you so much for listening. This has been the Stress and Anxiety Recovery Podcast with Shelley Treacher. I'll see you again soon.